most sought out speakers, and because of OSS and because of Parag Bhai, he's coming here. So we are really honored that he's actually coming here and visiting us and talking to us. We had a brief chat in the morning with him, where, in fact, we spent the entire morning with him, where he was asking us about things that we do in school, and we were telling him about random acts of kindness and 7 habits, and it was quite interesting for him to know. So let's welcome him. Welcoming Mr. Nipun Mehta on stage. We can start the session now. I invite Parag sir on stage to reintroduce Nipun Mehta to all of us.
Good afternoon and a warm welcome. So, how many know Nipun? Can you raise hands? Okay. So, he's the founder of Service Space. You must have read blah 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 blah. I'm extremely delighted to introduce him twice in 24 hours. He is here to enlighten us upon talking about service and giving and receiving and dancing. Nipun Mehta.
Good. Thank you. So I'm going to be informal. But what I want to talk about is this connected? Oh, it's coming. Ask and you shall receive. I was just talking to Vardhan. I saw the slogan. I'm very happy to be here. But I saw your slogan. It says to nurture leadership through primary greatness. Did I memorize it right? Okay, I can get a job here. Oh, memory doesn't. That's rote learning. It doesn't work. Okay. Yes, okay. So I asked him, so I was trying to get to understanding. So I said, what is primary greatness? And he says, well, first, secondary greatness is all the sort of material sort of progress, money, power, fame. Primary greatness is who we are, like our true essence, what it takes to be human. So I want to share just a few ideas, few stories, and I have 3 wonderful friends. We actually have a whole bunch of wonderful friends amongst us, but 3 that we are going to embarrass today, whom we'll ask to share a little bit also from their perspective. So it's not just one person talking, we get different views, and then perhaps after that we can do some Q&A. So I want to start, I don't know how I want to start, but there's a beautiful story that I'm always reminded of when I think about primary greatness. There was a friend of mine, he was teaching a class, maybe 50 students. His name was Jacob Needleman. And in this class, he says, how can people be good? That was the question that they were exploring. So everyone raises their hands. It's like, how did you learn to be good? Good as in, and they define what good was. So you can say compassionate, empathetic, whatnot. So everyone's raising their hand. This is how I learned, this is how I learned, this is how I learned. And then this guy raises his hand and he says, I learned how to be good from my 5-year-old. And everyone is like, everyone had these different theories and all these ideas. And this guy says, I learned from my 5-year-old. How can you learn from your 5-year-old? So they cross-examine him. He says, I was in Mexico on Christmas with my 5-year-old one time. And the day before, usually on 24th night, you get your gifts, at midnight. So it's like as soon as it's 25th, everyone opens the gifts and it's like super exciting for the kids. So this kid was no exception. He's super excited. He got all these toys and he's really happy. This is 25th morning. He has just received his gifts. 25th morning, he said he's playing with his toys that he has just received, and there's a kid from nearby slums that comes by. So father looks at him and says, son, this is someone that you are connected to. This is someone in our community. Go and give him one of your toys. But this guy just received the toys. Says, no way, dad, I'm not going to do it. He's like, no, dad says, son, give him one of your toys. So he's like, he starts crying. And he's like throwing a fit. He doesn't want to do it. And then, but it sees that dad's kind of serious. So he says, okay, fine. He's an enterprising young kid. So he says, okay, you know what I'm going to do? Dad is serious. I have to give one of my toys. So I'm going to give my least favorite toy. So he goes and picks up his least favorite toy. He says, I'm going to go and give this to the guy outside. So dad looks at him and he sees, dad knows because it's his least favorite. So he looks at his dad. Dad looks at his son. Says, son, not that one. Give him your favorite toy. Now at this point the son loses it. He's like, no way, dad, there's no way. But this is like the typical Lion King Mufasa moment. It's like, son. And he sees that dad is like serious, man. I'm gonna have to let go of my favorite toy. And he's just crying and weeping and throwing a tantrum. And he picks up his toy and he goes out to give his favorite toy. As he's about to go out, dad is thinking, my son has done a great thing. He has made this great sacrifice. So when he comes back, I will tell him that I'll get him another toy. I'll say nice things about what he's done. I'll, maybe change the topic. I want to get him to be happy. It's Christmas after all. So he has all these strategies. Son comes back. And before the dad can even say anything, he is glowing. He looks his dad in the eye and he says, Dad, that was amazing. Can I do it again? This is primary greatness. We all have this capacity to love, to connect, and to tap into that space. Sometimes we forget it. But kids, all in this aisle, it seems like, the younger you are, the closer we are. This is my sense. I don't have science behind it, although I'm sure science will catch up someday. But it just seems that, kids, we are so connected to each other. As we're born, we don't have an independent strategy. We don't have like, I'm going to go out and do this. We are dependent. And in that dependence comes a sense of interdependence. And comes a sense of empathy and caring and compassion. Because what I do to you, I do to myself. That understanding, we have somehow we have lost track as the dominant mainstream, and we need to bring us back. So we need to do this shift from me to we. I'm going to show you a video, just because it's a really nice video. It's like a 2-minute video. It was a commercial. Oh, wow, we have the AV. Do I need to increase the volume here? Oh, volume is mute. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this is a short 2-minute film, but it really shows the kind of culture that I think we all want to create. And then perhaps we can talk about how we can make this feasible and possible in Fountainhead and perhaps in the world. So here we go.
ไอ้ขี้ขโมยไหนดูสิเอาอะไรไปออกมานี่ไปทำอะไรเนี่ยฮะถามว่าเอาไปทำอะไรเอาไปให้แม่ฮะเจ๊แป๊บนึงแม่ป่วยอ่ะอย่าทำอย่างนี้อีกนะโว้ยเกาเหลา จัดไปสั่งมาเรื่องต่ออะไร
beautiful. So how do we create that kind of culture where we have this faith that it's not, everything is not just short term? This is my cousin, Alak, 6 years old. We ask him, so many times I think what we need in our culture with kids, with us, with even grown-up adults is triggers that inspire us to do greater things. So this is Alak. I asked him one time, how do you be the change? He says, what does be the change mean? So I said, like you like to smile, so how do you make other people smile? I must have said something like that. And he says, I tickle to make people smile. Yes, I am the change. This is who he is. So a few days ago in the US, we celebrate Thanksgiving. So our whole family had gotten together. I was here, and they played one of these videos. Perhaps if we have time, we'll play it at the end. It's called Grateful. Very inspiring video. And at the end of this video, this 6.5-year-old, this somehow comes in full form, and he says, I'm grateful for everything in the world, everything that I can see, hear, or feel. And then he pauses and he completes the sentence. He says, and everything I cannot see, hear, or feel. He's just grateful for everything. No, his parents had never taught him like you should say you're grateful or anything. It just kind of came up from in between. So how can you, but the trigger was that video. Trigger was that positivity that was held in the ambience. Everyone was sharing positive things. So what are those triggers, and how do we hold that context where nature can allow this innate empathy that is in us to shine? This is a woman that had a very interesting trigger. She says, this is, how many of you have heard of Roots of Empathy? Mary Gordon? Oh, good, okay. It's a great story. So this woman says there's a lot of bullying in Canada. She's from Canada. And a lot of the bullying is like basically meanness. And so what's the opposite of meanness? Is kindness. So she says we need to do something about this. We need to stop the bullying. Right? It doesn't help the person who is bullying. It doesn't help the person who is bullied. So how do we do this? She came up with an idea. So a lot of people, there's trillions of dollars are spent all over the world. She came up with an idea that was zero. Like it didn't cost anything. And of course now it's scaled up to a very big height, so there is some organizational overhead, but her whole basic idea was, if there is tension in the circle with people, she would say, I'm going to adopt that classroom. I'm going to come once a month. And this once a month, she gets people in a circle and everyone in the classroom. Then she brings 2 volunteers. One volunteer is a mom who is outside the circle, and the other volunteer is an infant, the mom's son or daughter. They place the son or daughter in the center of the circle. Then they ask everyone a very simple question. What is their son or daughter thinking? What is that infant thinking? So obviously there is no right answer because you don't know what that child is thinking. But in the very process of people saying, oh, what is that person thinking? You start going from me-centeredness to we-centeredness. You start thinking about the other person. You start creating new neural pathways in your brain. So your brain starts saying, wow, okay, I'm thinking about the other person. And now that's a path that I can take when I'm dealing with other people at other times. So they found that the bullying rate after 8 months of this program in a school starts to go down. In fact, it was so successful, they replicated it across 400 schools in Canada alone. And now they're like begging her to come to US. And she's going to do it. So this is this idea of a trigger. But her faith was not in the technology of gadgets and machines and things. And her innovation was in believing in innate empathy. That's the unfortunately, it should not be innovative. It should be natural. We should all understand that compassion is innate to us. Empathy is innate to us, but we have forgotten that. So this is kind of the core question that I think we can hold. How do we amplify empathy? This is the question that all these social change giants, anyone who has created sustainable social change, has always worked with empathy. It's never been activism. It's not me versus another. It's always all of us together. So that is a very interesting question to hold, which I'll ask these guys to share about in just a little bit. But I want to share one core idea before I pass it on. And the core idea is what I call Gandhi 3.0. Right? Gandhi 1.0, in software, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the software world, but in the software world we have the Microsoft Windows 1.0, then 2.0, 3.0. So I'm from the software world. So I'm not converting Gandhi into software, but nonetheless. So 1.0 was the first version of Gandhiji. He's one of him and many of us. We are inspired by him. There's wonderful references to Gandhi all over the Fountainhead School. So that's the original model. The second version, the 2.0 model, is how many of you have heard of Vinoba Bhave? Wow, very nice. I've been to so many places where you ask this question, like no one has heard of Vinoba. It's shocking. So Vinoba just walked from one place to another. It was still one of him, but he was doing one-to-one connections. He was connecting people one-to-one, and he was connecting with others one-to-one. Right? So that was the second sort of model, much more effective than many-to-one. And now what we see is many-to-many connections. This is what we see in nature all the time. Nature doesn't have one central bank, one central organizing principle. Nature is many-to-many. We are fundamentally embedded in this kind of a many-to-many network, but we didn't know how to organize socially in a many-to-many network. Many-to-many says everyone has value, and if we all connect with each other, then we can generate a lot more value together through the synergy. So if you look at it visually, it looks like this. This is the center hub and spoke model. This is the sort of 2.0 model. This is 3.0. So clearly, as you can see the graphs, if you look in a circle, if you look in a room, any room, it doesn't matter if there is a group of students or a group of teachers or a group of business people or a group of lawyers or politicians, the most effective solution is going to be group forming networks. It's going to be many to many. But we just didn't have a way of doing that. Now we do. So because of technology, we can, if we all had to decide which movie to go to, it would be a difficult thing. Right? So we would say, okay, you are in charge of these 4 people, you are in charge of 4, and then all those people will create a second level of hierarchy, and then you have the third level, and then we decide who's going to go. Right? In between, we lose a lot of value. But we have no other way because it's too complicated. The transaction costs are too much. Now, because of the internet, transaction costs are so little, you can create this with almost zero overhead. Used to be 18 to 19% traditional organizing overhead. Right? So, which means that we can now start assuming. There's a friend of mine who used to work at John Hopkins Hospital. He's passed away. And I asked him, what's the one greatest thing you have learned? He says, Nipun, the greatest thing I've learned is to approach each situation and assume value. Assume that there is something valuable going on there. So that, if previously it was very difficult to assume value. Previously, it was very difficult to say, if we want to raise the compassion quotient, if we want to amplify empathy, it was very difficult to do it unless you start creating these hierarchies and then you start having all kinds of other external problems. Now, we can create very new and interesting models that can allow this to happen. But this means, if you look at this particular way of being, there are significant shifts. Right? So this is the primary greatness that we're talking about. Primary greatness is already in us, and we just have to facilitate that. We have to facilitate that with triggers. But in this new modern world, what are those triggers, and what are the key traits that allow you to be successful in this kind of framework? So, I mean, this is, I don't mean to get too heady, but I'm just going to give you a few of these, and then I'm going to let these guys speak from the heart. So, this is, one thing is from leadership to laddership. Leadership says, I'm the center. Laddership are these people in here. It says, I'm going to support you. I want to ladder you. Right? There's a kind of humility to it. So if you see all the movements, right, in Egypt and all kinds of things that have happened, it's around laddership. You start to shift from center to edges. You start to shift from big to decentralized, small. It's no longer about like the lecture model, which is the old model. I have an idea, now I'm going to pass it on to you guys. It's more about how can all you guys start to create many small groups. If we say let's all go out and do kindness, and then you come back and report to me. If you tell me all your stories, I'm filtering, it becomes overhead. I need to hire 5 other people to read all your stories. It's not worth it. And I say, okay, we'll do this once a year kind of thing. But if you have many people talking to many people, doing many things, it can work. It can work in a very different way. Right? So what are those things? So I'm just going to leave you with questions. So I can share a little bit about spider and starfish, which is an interesting way to think about it. The spider is an 8-legged creature. And an 8-legged creature, if when you take away one of its legs, it's a 7-legged creature. If its head goes away, it dies. Right? Starfish, there are actual starfish in the world, but if one of its legs goes away, it creates its own new body. So how can we create a movement around these values of primary greatness that cannot be destroyed? So you try to chop off one of its leg, you say, okay, look, you guys are not behaving. This is not what I told you to do in the kindness group. They go out and create their own. Wonderful, right? With things like kindness, you want it to spread. So the starfish model becomes very interesting. I think this is the last slide, which is around inner transformation. So lot of the world, we look at problems in the world and we say we need to create impact to solve those problems in the world. This is the usual model that they teach at all the IIMs and all those business schools. Right? They say you start with impact. This is what I want to do. And to create that impact, you need projects. Once you have projects, you need people to implement the projects. So you have people. And then you say, okay, somewhere, somehow, they will have some inner transformation. It will happen. It's a byproduct. If it doesn't happen, okay, chalega, because our main thing is to get to this impact. But there is an alternative way. And that is to lead with inner transformation. You say, look, I want to be the change. Gandhiji didn't say go out and do the change, go out and talk about the change. He says be the change. Why? Because when you lead with that inner transformation, when you are different because of that one kind act, when you are different because you are teaching a class in a certain way, when you are different because you are leading with the spirit of leadership, that creates a transformation in you. And when that transformation touches someone else, you start to have people. Like you start to have a community. And those people will give rise to projects. And those projects will create impact. Right? So the impact, which is material, ends up trailing. Certainly it happens. Now the question is, okay, is this impact greater or is this impact greater? That's a question for you. I'm not going to answer it, but that's an important question to go through, right? To say, okay, well, what is the impact? So the two questions that I want to start the conversation with our wonderful esteemed panel is how have I learned empathy? How have I learned compassion? How have I learned generosity? Not teach, how have I learned? Because if you lead with inner transformation, it's all about how have you learned it? Because if you haven't learned it, it's just not going to go through. It's going to be a very impact-driven model. But if you want to lead with inner transformation, the key question to ask is, how have I learned this? Right? Whatever that this is. And in our case, it's empathy, compassion, kindness. So how have I learned it? And then I think the other question that we want to hold, maybe we'll ask others as well, is what is that one bold idea or 2 bold or 10 bold ideas of how do we bring this spirit to Fountainhead? Fountainhead already is so far ahead compared to so many other schools, so many other places. So how do we perhaps even take it up to another level? And so we create a whole new cadre of people who are awakened with this spirit. So I want to invite Madhusudan, who is a filmmaker. Before you applause, let me tell you a little bit about him. Madhu's life changed because of an act of kindness. And I don't know if he's going to share that story today, but someone left a camera, a $3,000 camera in front of his house. Not even a house. It was like a hotel room that he was staying in. It was, he had like no money at the time. He had a dream. He wanted to use films for social change. And it was this one act of kindness that encouraged him and just continued to, really push him in a very different direction. So Madhu is a filmmaker. He has done incredible work. We always like to tease him because last month Amitabh Bachchan volunteered for his project, which was all around spreading positive messages. So he has done a lot of secondary greatness, but really his greatness is the primary greatness, which is why we all love him. So Madhuji, thank you. Give him a round of applause.
We say Kush afternoon. So Kush afternoon, everyone. And I come from the Gandhi Ashram, Ahmedabad, and it's really humble just to be here. We have been hearing stories from Parag sir and Vardhan bhai about how just the kindness week which you had pretty soon, and just the stories which came out of it. So already inspired. So it's difficult to follow Nipun bhai, but I'll do my best. All I can do is share my stories of how what touched me or what inspired me when I look back now. So I like to bring my grandfather, the story of my grandfather when I was like around 10 years old. and I used to sit with my grandfather. I come from a very small village in Chhattisgarh, and so we had a small shop. I would sit next to my grandfather. A lot of times when I used to study in a boarding school like this. I was in a boarding school, and on vacations I used to come back. And when I used to sit, there a lot of sadhus or some sannyasis or people, with robes, they would come and says, we are going to Haridwar, we are going on a pilgrimage, we need some help. And he would, without any question asked, he would do whatever he could. He would offer some money for their traveling, or he would offer food, or he would offer stay over there. As a kid, when I saw him doing that, I immediately, a lot of time, not most of the time, but some of the times, mostly sannyasis, they would just take the money, and then, just they would gossip, sit next time, and they would smoke chillum or, cigarettes and beedis and stuff like that. And that was to make me very angry. Like, why, Babuji has to call him, why do you have to give them money? How do you know if they'll make good use of that money? And then he taught me my first lesson of generosity, to how to give, to give with no strings attached. He says, does a tree ask, who is going to eat my fruit? Imagine there's a mango tree and it's full with nice, delicious mangoes, and it's waiting. I'll give only to the most deserved one. I'll give it to the pious man, And what if it doesn't comes anyway? What if it doesn't comes according to his standards? One day the tree will fall down from the weight of its fruits. So it says, who are we to judge? Our thing, if we can give. So give with no strings attached. So that was the first lesson I learned, and I didn't really quite understand that time, but when I look back, you see the seeds, and that's why it comes to teachers. Somebody told me that being a teacher is one of the most beautiful thing, and it's also one of the most difficult thing. Beautiful thing because you're always making a difference in some of the children's life, and the difficult thing, you may never know about it. In this case, the 30 years back it came, but a lot of times we don't even know where the ripples are going in the children's mind. So that was my first. Second, as a kid, again, when I was next to him, a lot of people would come, because they know, go to his place, he'll get everything, sometimes. So a lot of times some sannyasi would come, or sometimes businessmen, sometimes just peon or anybody would enter our shop or home. My grandfather would do, like this thing. Okay, sit. So I would go and then, touch the feet, and then after some time, he would just like this says, I says, okay, I as to get the message, I would go and touch the feet. Whoever, nonetheless, whoever, if they enter our home or they enter the shop, I had to bend down and touch the feet. Okay. And then after some point, he would not even do this or this. He would just look at me. And then I know, okay. And then, Lord, when he was not looking at me, I would touch the feet because it's just like it came, right, in the genes. And then he would ask, did you touch? And then the other person, oh, yeah, he already touched. So that was my second lesson on humility, How can you serve effortlessly? So it becomes so much part of you that you become humble, and so many people, robbed my grandfather in some, they took borrowed money and they never returned. So always avoiding the conflict with love. I says, what would happen? So that's, and when I look back, that's like, it used to be irritating that time, but now when you look back, just understand the humility of just being able to adjust, be able to adapt, being able to see the humanness of others, and to be able to connect with them in a much deeper level. And the third one, which used to taught me, was about in the last. So after some years, when I went back and it says, like recently, in fact, it says, Babuji, what is this? What is the sar? What is the essence of your entire life? He was a very simple man. He had very few possessions. And nothing. He just never needed anything. Just by himself, just doing prayers or just doing whatever small act of kindness, whatever he could do. So I just asked him, what is the essence of your life? And he looked back and he says, just one thing, kabhi kisi ka dil mat dukhana. That's all. He says, never hurt anybody. So how can you love fearlessly? That's what I learned from him. So to be able to do that. And when I look back, I think these three things, and it's sometimes very difficult to do, but it comes down to all that and simple things. And I'm just blessed to be part of such group who believe in small act of kindness, because my life has changed, and I believe with all my heart, all my naiveness, all my deep down my soul, that there is really God in all of us, and the only way to really be able to connect with each other is when we are able to do a small act of kindness, because then really we move from that isolation to community. Is really then we move from me to we, and we just don't think about ourselves, but we really see as a whole, as a humanity. So thank you for listening.
Next, I'll invite Audrey. Audrey is visiting from the United States. She lives in Berkeley, although now you live in India. At the moment, she's in India. But Audrey, among other things, she did this program where people from all over the world came together in California for one summer. And they had an internship for 3 months and has done incredible work. She graduated from Berkeley in nonviolence and social change. Very interesting major. So I invite Audrey to share some of her unique perspectives.
Hello. So I was thinking about that question that Nipun had put on the board. Where have I learned empathy? And similar to Madhu, I thought about my father. And how when I was about 10, or maybe a little younger, I went, a friend had a birthday, and it was my first time kind of going in. I didn't live in a city area, I lived kind of in the suburbs, so we were going into the city, and it was my first time kind of encountering beggars and homeless people, and people that didn't have a lot. And as we were walking through, there was a beggar that came up and asked for money, and I was with my friend and her mom at the time, and we just walked by and said, no, we don't have anything. And I thought, oh, okay. So, at the time I thought, well, okay, so when I see a beggar, I just walk by and say, no, I don't have anything. And then maybe a year or two later, I was with my parents, and we were walking in kind of this underground tunnel area, underground walkway, and there was a lot of traffic. I think it was the end of the day, and a lot of people were coming through, and there was this homeless man standing kind of in the middle of the walkway with a sign and a cup. And as we were walking, my dad just beelined to this homeless man and looked in his cup, and his jaw dropped, and he said, "Oh, there's nothing in here." And the homeless man said, "Well, yes, sir, you're the first one who stopped for me today." And so my dad just then emptied out his pockets, put them in the cup, and patted him on the back and said, "Well, I hope you have a nice day," and then came back, and we continued walking. And then at the time, I remember thinking back to my first experience and how at first the modeling that I had seen was to not offer anything, to not stop. And then how in this instance with my father, I saw this new modeling of, oh, this is a new framework through which I can interact with this person. And when I think about empathy, for me now, thinking back on that experience, I feel like that was a way where I learned sympathy. Because in a way, here was a man who didn't have a lot, and we were just giving to them. But I wasn't really, that kind of inner connection wasn't as much there. It was kind of this, oh, I have something, let me give it to you. And so I think an instance where I've kind of had more of an empathy experience is probably in things that are really simple and really small. And there was a few months ago, a group of us were celebrating our birthdays, and instead of kind of celebrating our birthday with a typical birthday party, we decided to just go out on the street with signs that said smile, or spare a smile. And so we got together and we kind of just drew out these posters, and then we went to these intersections. And in the US, in this city, the streets are really wide and everyone just drives, and no one really kind of looks at each other. And so we just thought, well, let's just take an hour and just try to make as many people as we can smile. And it was very simple, but we just went out. And at first, some of us just felt kind of nervous about it, because it's kind of an unusual thing to just go out with these signs, like people might think we're protesting something, or it's kind of, you're putting yourself out there. But we just thought it would be fun, and because we were all together and kind of in the spirit together, we kind of built off of each other's energy and went out and did it. And as we were standing there, with these big signs saying smile, these cars would drive up, and you would just see all the different types of people, sitting in these cars, from kids to elderly people to people all over, all across the spectrum, people on their cell phones, people talking on the phone, families, out for the afternoon. And there's something in just connecting on like a very, I just want to wish you well. I just want you to smile just because you're a human being and we can all smile, you know? There's something that breaks down my own barriers and in the way that I interact with people. And I think in schools, I remember being a student and just feeling really stressed, feeling a lot of pressure to do well, to be successful, and you know, and then I would just not see the people in front of me because I was so busy thinking about all the work I had to do, all the deadlines that I had, and wanting to live up to certain expectations. And in doing something simple like holding a smile sign, it kind of just brought me back to the present moment and made me kind of see that we're all in it together. It's not so much about competing with each other and everyone kind of working for themselves, but that we all have values to offer. We all have something to offer, and when we can see that, it just becomes a much simpler way of operating. And so I guess those are kind of lessons that I've been learning and I'm continuing to learn. And should I introduce Tripti or?
Or actually, I may show the video. But why don't you introduce her anyways? Yeah, sure.
Okay. So one of the people that I've been learning these lessons from is Tripti, who her sister had a birthday on November 14th. And she wasn't with her sister on her sister's birthday, but she thought, well, since my sister's having a birthday and I've been hearing about these stories about people doing small acts, I want to do 14 random acts of kindness for her birthday on November 14th. And so Tripti, maybe after the video, is going to share a bit about what she learned.
Or before the video.
Or before the video.
Plan B.
थैंक यू, नमस्कार। यहाँ पे जब से मैं ये कम्युनिटी को जानती आई हूँ, बहुत सारी इंस्पिरेशनल स्टोरीज़ मैं सुनती हूँ और उसी से इंस्पायर होकर आज मैं 3 स्टोरीज़ शेयर करने वाली हूँ। सबसे पहली स्टोरी जाती है ऐसे, मैं अपने जॉब के लिए हर ट्यूसडे मुझे करजन जाना होता है। तो सुबह मतलब ऐसा होता है कि मैं अपने घर से निकलती हूँ, मैं ऑपोजिट डायरेक्शन में चलती हूँ, फिर मुझे गाड़ी पिकअप करती है और फिर मैं वापस ऐसे आती हूँ। सो इनिशियली जब मेरे बॉस ने मुझे कहा कि दिस इज़ द वे, सो देयर वर क्वेश्चंस कि यार गाड़ी ऐसे ही मुझे उल्टा चलना पड़ता है, मैं वापस ऐसे जाती हूँ, तो फंडा क्या है उसका। सो दे टोल्ड मी कि देयर आर सर्टेन रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस एंड यू हैव टू फॉलो दैट। तो मैंने बोला ठीक है। तो एवरी टाइम मुझे उतना चल के जाना पड़ता था। सो देयर वाज लॉट ऑफ एंगर कि ये क्या है, क्योंकि मेरी जो बॉस है उसको वो लोग घर के डोर स्टेप तक लेने जाते हैं और मुझे इतना चलना पड़ता है। सो आई थॉट कि चलो जाने दो। बट एवरी ट्यूसडे देयर वर लाइक सर्टेन वेरी गुड एक्सपीरियंसेस। सो 7:30 इज़ माई टाइम, सो आई लीव। और तब बहुत सारे लोग वॉक करने के लिए निकलते हैं। सो और स्पेशली मुझे ओल्ड लोग जो होते, जो दादाजी होते हैं, दादी होते, वो सब मुझे बहुत प्यारे लगते। तो जब मैं ऐसे निकलती हूँ रोड पे, तो वो लोग ऐसे सब चल रहे होते एकदम मस्त जोश में, और वो लोग ऐसे विश करेंगे जय श्री कृष्ण एंड ऑल। सो 2-3 हफ्ते पहले जब मैं अपने घर से निकली, तो एक दादाजी को मैंने देखा धोती पहने हुए, तो ऐसे टोपी वोपी पहनी थी उन्होंने। तो ऐसे मैं निकली और मैंने सोचा कि ऐसे मैं उनको जाके विश करती हूँ जय श्री कृष्ण, पर मेरी हिम्मत नहीं हुई उनको बोलने। फिर मैंने बोला चलो छोड़ो, जाने दो, नेक्स्ट कोई दादाजी मिलेंगे तो तब उनको मैं विश कर लूँगी। और बस 20 कदम कुछ मैं आगे चली और एक दादाजी आए सामने। तो तब वो थोड़ा सा फियर था अंदर के ऐसे मैं कहूँगी तो सब ठीक होगा ना, ऐसे कोई जज तो मुझे नहीं करेगा, या वो सामने मुझे स्माइल देंगे, ऐसे बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस चल रहे थे। और फिर भी ऐसे जस्ट ऐसे थोड़ा सा मैं झुकी एंड आई हैड थोड़ा सा डरते डरते थोड़ी सी मैंने स्माइल दे दी। और जो मुझे सामने रिस्पॉन्स मिला, 80 इयर्स के दादाजी होंगे एंड ही वॉज जय श्री कृष्ण, इतना ज़्यादा झुके। सो दैट वॉज वन थिंग जहाँ पे मैं सीखी कि जहाँ पे हम 10% अपना देते हैं पर सामने हमें 90% मिल जाता है, विच इज़ लाइक 100%। सो दैट वॉज वन इंसिडेंट। सेकेंड इंसिडेंट ऐसा था कि लास्ट वीक ऐसे हम सारे दोस्त चाय के ठेले पे मिले एंड वी वर टॉकिंग, गपशप हुई सब, और उसके बाद आई डिसाइडेड कि आई विल यूज़ पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्टेशन। सो मैंने वो जगह से चलना शुरू किया और जहाँ से मुझे रिक्शा मिलती है वहाँ तक मैं चलते चलते आई, और फिर ऑन द वे मुझे एक ऑरेंज वाला दिखा। सो आई थॉट कि चलो मैं ऑरेंजेस ले जाती हूँ घर पे। सो और मेरे पर्स में 100 रुपीज़ ही थे। सो 70 रुपीज़ kg था, तो आई बॉट 1 kg ऑफ ऑरेंजेस। उसके बाद मैं थोड़ा आगे चल के गई तो मैंने बनानास देखे, तो मैंने और वो मेरा फेवरेट फ्रूट है, तो मैंने सोचा अब ये तो लेना ही पड़ेगा, तो विच वॉज 20 रुपीज़ kg, तो मैंने वो भी ले लिया। उसके बाद बचे मेरे पास 10 रुपीज़, तो फिर मैं रिक्शा में बैठी और मैंने पूछा कि भैया यहाँ तक मेरे घर तक जाना है तो कितने पैसे होंगे, तो उन्होंने कहा 10 रुपये। तो आई वाज लाइक हाँ चलो मेरे पास 10 रुपये है अब। तो जनरली जब हम रिक्शा से उतरते हैं तो उसके बाद हम पैसे देते हैं उनको, तो मैंने बड़े स्मार्टली उनको पहले ही पैसे दे दिए। मैंने बोला कि भैया ये लो 10 रुपये, और फिर मैंने पर्स वर्स एकदम पैक करके ऐसे मैं बैठ गई। और उस रिक्शा में हम लोग टोटल 9 जन थे। पीछे 4 और आगे 5, और हम लोग ने हमारी जर्नी शुरू की और सब लोग ऐसे बातें कर रहे थे कि यार कितने सारे लोगों को भरा है अंदर ये वो, पर कोई वो नहीं सोच रहा है कि हम लोग भी सब उसी रिक्शा में है करके। तो सब लोग एक दूसरे को बोल रहे थे। उतनी देर में सामने से एक ट्रैफिक पुलिस आया और उन्होंने रोका कि रोको रोको करके, और द वेरी फर्स्ट स्टेटमेंट वॉज कि दूर से देखा तो पता ही नहीं चल रहा था कि चला कौन रहा है रिक्शा करके। या सो फिर ऐसा हुआ कि हमें रिक्शा से उतर जाना पड़ा, और उन्होंने बोला कि रिक्शा तो अब RTO जाएगी तो तुम सब उतर जाओ। सो दैट वॉज द टाइम आई वॉज थिंकिंग कि मैं वो 10 रुपये वापस लूँ, क्योंकि मेरे पास पैसे नहीं है, यहाँ पे कोई ATM नहीं है, तो मैं घर कैसे जाऊँगी करके। तो फिर मैंने सोचा चलो छोड़ो, मैं चलना शुरू करती हूँ। तो कुछ 7 किलोमीटर्स था घर दूर, तो मैंने चलना शुरू किया। आई वॉज वॉकिंग करके सब आसपास मैं देख के जा रही हूँ, और धीरे धीरे मेरे बैग में ऑलरेडी 2 kgs के तो फ्रूट्स ही थे, और प्लस मेरा जो भी सामान था, तो माई शोल्डर स्टार्टेड एकिंग। तो फिर मैंने सोचा, तो बीच में एक बेंच आया तो मैं वहाँ पे बैठ गई, और मैंने बोला थोड़ी देर में रेस्ट करती हूँ, उसके बाद मैं वापस चलना शुरू करती हूँ। फिर ऑन द वे ऐसे मैं चल रही थी और कुछ बच्चे दिखे मुझे, तो मैंने सोचा कि चलो कुछ ऑरेंजेस में उनके साथ शेयर कर दूँ। वैसे झोले में से मैंने जो फ्रूट निकला तो मैंने सबको, ऐसे एक वॉचमैन था, कुछ बच्चे थे, तो मैंने उनको दिया। फिर आगे वापस मैंने चलना शुरू किया, तो 1-2 ऐसे अंकल थे अकेले बैठे हुए थे, तो मैंने सोचा कि चलो उनको भी मैं देती हूँ। और ये करते करते मेरे बैग में जो वेट था वो रिड्यूस हो गया, और जो मुझे हर्ट हो रहा था वो होना भी बंद हो गया। तो इस इंसिडेंट से मैं वो सीखी कि जनरली हमारी टेंडेंसी होती है सब कुछ इकट्ठा करने की। जब मैंने वो ऑरेंजेस देखे तो मुझे थे कि वाओ, घर जाके मैं बहुत सारे ऑरेंजेस खाने वाली हूँ। तो और फिर जब मैंने ये दिया तो तब वो एक थॉट आया कि 1 kg मैंने दिया था, पर उसमें से वो सारा मेरा नहीं था, कुछ इन लोगों के लिए भी था। और वो देते समय जो स्माइल्स उनके मुंह पे आई, क्योंकि ऐसे मैं चल रही थी और ऐसे मैंने निकाल के दिया, एंड देवर से कि दीदी थैंक यू करके वो स्माइल। और जब मैं जा रही थी तो मैंने सुना कि वो पीछे वॉचमैन को बोल रहा है कि ये दीदी कौन थे, वो हमारे फ्लैट में रहते ऐसे वैसे करके, एंड आई वॉज स्माइलिंग एंड गोइंग। सो दैट वॉज सेकेंड इंसिडेंट जहाँ पे आई कुड लर्न समथिंग। एंड फाइनली जो ऑड्री ने शेयर किया कि मेरी सबसे बड़ी दीदी का बर्थडे था, एंड इट वॉज ऑन 14th November। सो वी थॉट कि हम 14 रैंडम एक्ट्स ऑफ काइंडनेस करेंगे। So while doing those जो चीज़ें मैंने सीखी वो थी कि हमें पैसों की ज़रूरत जनरली नहीं होती है जब हम रैंडम एक्ट्स करते हैं, क्योंकि 14 रैंडम एक्ट्स जो मैंने किया उसमें से मैंने हार्डली कुछ पैसे मैंने स्पेंड किए होंगे। जितनी भी चीज़ें थी वो सारी मेरे घर के ही चीज़ें थी, विच वॉज लाइक स्टोर्ड। जैसे कि मम्मी की एक साड़ी थी विच आई गिफ्टेड टू, जहाँ पे हम चाय पीने के लिए इकट्ठा सब लोग होते हैं, तो मैंने उन्हें वो दिया। फिर एक फ्रेंड के वहाँ पे उसकी शादी हो रही थी 1 हफ्ते बाद, तो ऐसे पेड़ पत्ते कुछ हमने इकट्ठा किया और हमने रंगोली बाहर बनाई, और उसको पता भी नहीं था। और जब उसने खोला तो उसको लगा कि ओ मेरा वेडिंग है, तो किसी ने वो ब्लैक मैजिक तो नहीं किया है ना। सो दैट वाज द वेरी फर्स्ट थॉट उसको आया था। तो ऐसे 14 रैंडम एक्ट्स हमने किया, एंड द होल प्रोसेस वॉज कि जहाँ पे स्वीट्स मैं देने के लिए गई, तो जो बच्चे थे, मैं ऐसे डब्बा लेके मैं खड़ी थी और मैंने पूछा कि कौन कौन खाएगा स्वीट्स, एंड बच्चे वर्ड मुझे चाहिए करके. एंड जब मैं बुजुर्ग लोग या बड़े लोगों के पास गई, सो देयर वर लाइक डाउट्स. तो उन्होंने पूछा कि जनरली वी टीच आवर चिल्ड्रन के जब स्ट्रेंजर्स आते हैं तो हमें उनसे कुछ भी नहीं खाना चाहिए. सो शुड आई ईट और नॉट, दिस वॉज देयर क्वेश्चन. और जो बच्चे थे दे वर सो ओपन एंड वो ऐसे दौड़ते हुए. सो देयर वर लाइक दिस बेसिक लर्निंग जो हुआ, और उसमें से सबसे बड़ा लर्निंग वॉज कि यू डोंट नीड मनी और रिसोर्सेज. जब हम सोचते कि मेरे पास इतना पैसा होगा तो मैं ये स्टार्ट करूंगी, बट जनरली वी डोंट नीड दैट. वी कैन जस्ट स्प्रेड आवर स्माइल्स, लव एंड थिंग्स दैट वी हैव, वी कैन जस्ट गिव इट. या दैट्स इट. थैंक यू.
So I think what we'll do is I'll share one story, one video, and then we can do some question and answer. So I have. How many of you have heard of this 21-day kindness challenge, or have you guys done it? Yeah, it's great. So for all those people that intern, I run an organization called Service Space, and people will come and intern for the summer. So as one of the things that they all have to do is a 30-day kindness challenge. So the idea behind 30 days kindness challenge is that you build your kindness muscles. Just as you have, you build your physical muscles, you also have these kindness muscles. So everyone has incredible things. So first 10 days, beautiful things happen. Because these are all ideas. Like if you say every day you have to do a unique a kindness idea, then people say, okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I know what I'm going to do. Then you run out of ideas after the first 10 days. Then you say, well, what else can I do? And you start becoming very creative in the second 10 days. And then in the third 10 days, that's when magic starts to happen. Because wherever you have a lack, this kindness capacity, this overflow of kindness starts to flow wherever it needs to go, and you start healing. So this we have seen in all kinds of people. We don't do anything, actually nature does everything, we just hold space. So we had this one girl, she was maybe, I want to say 19, but maybe 21, one of the two prime numbers. Not prime numbers, odd numbers. And I haven't been in school in a long time. So she decides to do this, and every day she's doing some beautiful acts of kindness, and she writes to us. And this is the new act of kindness I did today. She leaves something for some other people. She writes notes of appreciation. It's beautiful. Then on day 22, she writes us a letter. She says, today I decided to be kind to myself. We said, okay, how are you kind to yourself? She says that when I was before my teen years, when I was less than 13 years old, I was driving in a car. I was in the back seat. Mom and dad are in the front seat. Dad is driving. Car gets in an accident. Mom passes away. 1 month after that, dad's hair turns jet white. Like it has been that way since. Very traumatic experience for her. She doesn't know how to process it. She just stuffed it in. She says, today is day 22. I decided to be kind to myself, and I decided that I'm going to go visit my mom's grave for the first time by myself. And that capacity, we didn't tell her that, oh, you can do this. We didn't give her a pep talk that, oh, you can go out and do this. We just held space for kindness, and kindness gave her this new capacity, and then where it needed to flow. And as people heal, all of a sudden we start to create a new person, and as different people are ignited in this way with this kind of primary greatness, we have a different world. So that's the possibility. So I want to end with this video that perhaps a bunch of you have probably seen, but we had 6,000 people that did this kindness challenge. We just tried this for 21. It takes 21 days to break a habit. So we said, if you do 21 days of kindness, maybe you'll start, creating a new habit. So we did this, and a lot of people participated from around the world, and it just created some really beautiful stories. Right? And anyone who reads these, there are thousands and thousands of stories there, and it just kind of like brightens your day. So one of those was a rapper, an Indian American rapper. He raps in multiple languages, and he says, I want to gift something to all these 6,000 people that have done this. So just as a pure labor of love, he does this music video, which is beautiful. So maybe we'll end this part with this, and then we'll do some Q&A after that. So here is Nemo and Being Kind.
thinking and I'm thinking, what's the reason why we holding back from being kind? What's the disease? But then I sense we are fine. It'll all happen one small step at a time. When the world is full of violence and it needs a little kindness, I just sit and pray in silence, and God shows me the signs. Open my eyes, realize we are fine. One small act at a time. Last night I'm walking home and the homeless man says hello with a smile to let me know that he's got a lot of hope. He says, have faith, young man, we are fine. The world is kind. One small act at a time. Small acts we do together, even though maybe alone, changes the world for the better, so we can call it home. And this is life as we know, when our hearts are aligned, the magic that unfolds, one small act at a time. Throw your hearts up, let it fly high, let your love for all the world spread through the skies. Let it drop down, let it all go, spreading kindness to every single living soul. Can you see your love for me shining through? Cause what you see in me, I can see in you. And soon enough, you and me will be out of time, and kindness will be all we can leave behind. Yeah, feeling grateful today. Never thought this day would come where I would feel it and say that each and every one of us has paved the way doing good, and now we're all just moving up. When I'm kind to you, you pay it forward. This is how we build trust. Never had faith, but now I'm seeing you. I wanna gift you my life, wanna spread love before I die. Thank you, God, for finally letting me realize when I serve man, I'm really serving you in disguise. Smiles everywhere, cause now everybody's got the bug. Ain't no life without the love. If it is, it ain't no fun. What we gonna do now? Just grab a friend and give a hug. Spread it out real wide so everyone can be touched. Throw your hearts up, let it fly high, let your love for all the world spread through the skies. Let it drop down, let it all go, spreading kindness to every single living soul. Can you see your love for me shining through? Cause what you see in me, I can see in you. And soon enough, you and me will be out of time, and kindness will be all we can leave behind. All we can leave behind. For you and I, kindness is all we can leave behind. All we can leave behind. For you and I, kindness is all we can leave behind. When all is said and done, kindness is all we can leave behind. Throw your hearts up, let it fly high, let your love for all the world spread through the skies. Let it drop down, let it all go, spreading kindness to every single living soul. Can you see your love for me shining through? Cause what you see in me, I can see in you. And soon enough, you and me will be out of time, and kindness will be all we can leave behind.
Isn't that beautiful? So yeah, thank you. Maybe we can all come here and engage in some Q&A. So I think the question is, how can we create this kind of a world? By being the change, by supporting other people in being the change, and by being bold and gutsy in the direction of love. There's a lot of people who are bold and gutsy in other directions, but what can we do in the direction of kindness and compassion? And what are you already doing? I know you've already done, you had a wisdom, what did you call it, the store? Wisdom bookstore. You guys have done random acts of kindness. You had a whole week, right? 1 week for doing that? Yeah? So already you're doing things. So it'd be great to even hear some stories of what you've done, what's worked, what hasn't, or if you have any questions for any of us, we can do that as well. We're also happy to be silent, so it's okay.
Myself Pooja Sharma, and I would like to share my family experience after my marriage. Earlier means हम लोगों के यहाँ पे घर पे मेरे native place पे we don't have such type of experience की act of kindness and we don't know. But after my marriage, on the first day when I went there, I saw what my mother-in-law did. She bought goods and she used to do this thing every time. वहाँ पे वृद्धाश्रम है means she used to do she go there and मतलब उनका ये रहता है हमेशा कि वहाँ पे जाके देना. मीन्स आई कांट एक्सप्रेस दैट टाइम. मुझे वो सब रियलाइज नहीं हो रहा था. मुझे ये लग रहा था एक तो मैं फर्स्ट डे वहाँ पहुँची हूँ और कुछ है नहीं, कोई गेस्ट नहीं, कोई कुछ नहीं. पर उन्होंने सिर्फ वो वहाँ पे नहीं, ऐसे ही वहाँ पे वृद्धाश्रम की जगह और चाइल्ड से वहाँ पे जो मतलब सिख हैं, कोई उनको कोई एजुकेशन देने वाला नहीं, वहाँ पे ऐसे बाल आश्रम करके बोलते हैं. वहाँ पे जाती हैं, वो चॉकलेट्स देती हैं. नॉट ओनली चॉकलेट्स, बिस्किट्स, वॉट एवर दे रिक्वायर्ड, क्लॉथ्स. और उसके लिए वो सिर्फ खुद एफर्ट्स नहीं करती हैं. शी स्टार्ट कलेक्टेड एंड गेट इट फ्रॉम अदर्स ऑल्सो हु वांटेड टू रेडी बट डोंट वांट टू गो देयर. शी डज ऑल दिस थिंग्स. तो शुरू में मीन्स आई हैव कंप्लीटेड माई 7 years आफ्टर मैरिज, बट नाउ आई रियलाइज कि रियली उनका ये जो सब है मीन्स इट रियली वर्क्स एंड इट रियली मेक चेंजेस इन मी ऑल्सो. कि नाउ आई एम ट्राइंग टू लर्न माई डॉटर ऑल्सो. कि अभी हमने स्टार्ट किया है कि हम उसको स्लम्स में लेके जाते हैं. वी जस्ट गेट हर टू डिस्ट्रीब्यूट स्मॉल बिस्किट पैकेट्स, बच्चे जो रहते हैं उनको, और यही सब हम उसको सिखाने के अभी बस जस्ट वी हैव स्टार्टेड. बट आई रियली got all this from my mother-in-law and she is really doing good in her life.